Today on Sekulow, happening now, President Trump meets with Israel's Netanyahu as Kamala Harris stands with the radical left.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Jordan Sekulow.
Welcome to Sekulow, folks. We are taking your phone calls, 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. Rick Grenell is going to be joining us in studio for the second half hour of the show today, so that'll be great to have him here with us. Just to update you on a couple of issues right off the bat, we want to take your phone calls too at 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. First, yesterday, in a very interesting move, already kind of putting Kamala Harris in the position of, she's not president yet technically, but almost like a president, because she got her separate meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu when he was at the White House. And so while the meeting with President Biden was a much longer, and I'm guessing had more staff and more senior staff there, like a 3-hour meeting on some substantive issues and not a huge readout. There wasn't a big statement from President Biden after the meeting condemning or praising anyone. I think we know what the goals are of Israel. The goals of Israel is get hostages back, destroy Hamas, let the Palestinian people somehow figure out how to rebuild and rebuild with partners you can trust. By the way, the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank is now saying, hey, Hamas, we'll reach out and work with you.
Partnering up.
Of course, this was the same two groups that were throwing each other off the tops of buildings in the early 2000s when Hamas took over the Gaza Strip when Israel evacuated.
I think when you see a United States of America potentially on the brink of turning their backs on Israel, which is not what, if you watch the first half of what Vice President Harris said, you'd probably be like, okay, I'm down. It seems very strong. And then the second half, it just played to all the talking points of the left. Do we have a bite we could play from this?
It was pretty much, yeah. Can we play the Harris statements just for everybody in case you missed it yesterday? She did kind of a presidential move by coming out of this meeting with Netanyahu,
very presidential,
and doing her own take, not with him, not with a report, not like with a bunch of reporters questioning. She just came out and said, "Okay, this is what we met about." Now she only got 40 minutes with him, so it was a very much shorter, less substantive meeting. But now she's speaking on foreign policy. She's never really spoken on foreign policy before. We have no idea what her foreign policy is. I guess we're starting to get a clue. It's not very pro-Israel, but take a listen. Like Logan said, really listen to that second part.
I also expressed with the Prime Minister my serious concern about the scale of human suffering in Gaza, including the death of far too many innocent civilians. And I made clear my serious concern about the dire humanitarian situation there, with over 2 million people facing high levels of food insecurity, and 500,000 people facing catastrophic levels of acute food insecurity. What has happened in Gaza over the past 9 months is devastating. The images of dead children and desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety, sometimes displaced for the second, third, or fourth time. We cannot look away in the face of these tragedies. We cannot allow ourselves to become numb to the suffering, and I will not be silent.
Now, here's the thing. There was a first part where she said, I stand with Israel. It should be a Jewish state.
Should always be a Jewish state.
But then, boom. Now, if you say statements like she just made, and those protesters who were burning U.S. flags and were desecrating our capital city, and they listened to what she said, and it sounds like, wait, the country's doing these horrible things to these people, then it makes the protesters seem like what they're doing is right, because if America is supporting that. So Harris is really putting up a different policy even than Biden when it comes to Israel. So this, during our Life and Liberty deadline, which is in less than a week, and we are still short of our goal, folks, we know that Israel faces dangerous threats, and now Vice President Harris has refused to preside. She didn't even go to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's joint address to Congress, and we saw Hamas is coming, spray-painted in Washington, D.C., but we are mobilizing our office in Jerusalem, and the ACLJ is preparing what may be the most important brief ever to be filed in defense of Israel. Donate today at aclj.org and double your impact. Support Israel.
Vice President Kamala Harris met in Washington with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
It's also interesting that this is happening on its own without President Biden, which is really setting her up, as we just found out this week, that she is the presumptive Democratic nominee, that Biden endorsed her to be the next commander-in-chief.
Substantively, she's not different from President Biden on this topic, but tonally, rhetorically, she is. That she has a tendency to speak more forcefully on this issue.
So to everyone who has been calling for a ceasefire, and to everyone who yearns for peace, I see you and I hear you. Let's get the deal done so we can get a ceasefire to end the war.
She gave him the back of her hand. She didn't even show up to his speech in front of Congress. She should have been sitting behind him. Instead, she went to some sorority in Indiana, and then she comes back now and lectures Bibi on the war.
I remain committed to a path forward that can lead to a two-state solution. And I know right now it is hard to conceive of that prospect, but a two-state solution is the only path that ensures Israel remains a secure, Jewish, and democratic state, and one that ensures Palestinians can finally realize the freedom, security, and prosperity that they rightly deserve.
Kamala Harris never disappoints when it comes going left. She is more aggressive against Israel than Joe Biden. She's more pro-Palestinian and anti-Semitic as it relates to the wing of her party that leads the conversation. She is willing to appease those in her party. That is disgusting, devastating, and will ring hollow to those of us who know you have to be loyal to your allies so that you can be lethal to your adversaries.
Welcome back to Sekulow. We are taking your phone calls at 1-800-684-3110. As we discuss, again, Vice President Harris's very critical statements about Israel. We've already played for you some of those. There's more to play as well. I do want to mention as kind of the big endorsement that I think seals this up, and the way the DNC set this up, this was sealed up already, but the Obama endorsement has come.
Yes,
I tweeted out this morning from both Barack and Michelle Obama. They made a phone call to Vice President Harris this morning. Was it a phone call?
Yeah, it was a phone call on a video. It was like a staged phone call for a "we're happy to call and endorse you," very scripted moment. Kind of an awkward video, to be honest, but
another kind of. I mean, but once you have his endorsement, and we can show it for people because now you see the entire Democrat Party.
They're behind it.
There's a difference between the Democrat Party and the Republican Party. In the Republican Party, the candidate who is for president or the president really is in charge of the party. In the Democrat Party, the party is in charge. And I think we see that. And that's that super delegates and all those weird things they say they fixed, but now we realize the super delegates really are in charge. The Clintons and the Obamas decided to push Biden out. Yeah. And so it doesn't matter if you're president. It doesn't even matter if you won the nomination. If the Obamas think
and
they've got someone better to put in for the campaign, even if you've only got a few months to get the campaign going. Take a listen or watch.
Kamala.
Hello. Hi.
Hey there.
Oh, hi. You're both together. Oh, it's good to hear you both.
I can't have this phone call without saying to my girl Kamala, I am proud of you. This is going to be historic.
We called to say Michelle and I couldn't be prouder to endorse you and to do everything we can to get you through this election and into the Oval Office.
Oh my goodness. Michelle, Barack, this means so much to me. I am looking forward to doing this with the two of you, Doug and I both, and getting out there, being on the road. But most of all, I just want to tell you the words you have spoken and the friendship that you have given over all these years mean more than I can express. So thank you both. It means so much. And we're going to have some fun with this too, aren't we?
Now, I actually think Obama to Biden moved further left because when Obama came in, you couldn't just go as left as they wanted to go. No, you had to kind of take the country on a path. Yeah. And you had Donald Trump, kind of the revolt against moving to the left and the Affordable Care Act. But Barack Obama has been silent with Joe Biden. He never never has really done anything. He shows up sometimes at the White House.
Yeah, he'll do an event. He did that George Clooney event.
But doesn't say much.
Yeah.
except for get out of the race.
Yeah.
And didn't really want him to run in the first place. And now we know that he is fully backing. The question I have, we don't know yet, is, and this will be interesting, Logan, because I think it does change the race significantly because it helps Harris out a lot, especially if she's still a little awkward, which I will tell you, the Harris I knew when we did the impeachment and we would see her on the floor of the Senate, a very different person. With she's tall, she's got very imposing personality, staff. She wasn't like that. There's something with the cameras, and there's probably something with working in Joe Biden's White House.
I think that's a lot of it, yeah.
Could you imagine the stress level of if you know you're working for a weekend at Bernie's?
Yeah, and you're given also some ridiculous things you have to talk about.
And you're supposed to be fixing the border, but you can't even talk to the President of the United States after 6 o'clock at night. So.
Now, this video didn't make me believe we're going to see a completely different person, but it made me feel like we're going to see
Obama on the trail.
I think absolutely.
Because if we do, this is a very, very
people will
election.
show up to see Barack Obama still.
He can get the numbers, not maybe of Trump numbers, but pretty darn close.
And if you go to Chicago,
you go to the right cities.
If you go to Chicago during the convention and you can have some sort of big moment.
You go to Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be.
True.
It's good. Yeah, true. Georgia then becomes much more in play again.
Oh, yes, because of the African American vibe. We're not. Again, you just look at who needs to show up to vote. And if you kept Joe Biden there and Kamala Harris was kind of in this number 2 role, the black vote was kind of already, we were talking about how Donald Trump was actually doing unbelievably well amongst African-American male voters. And he still might, by the way. But if Barack Obama comes back in a way, and he's kind of been gone long enough to where the people that liked him a lot, or even if you just follow politics, you would kind of like tune back in. Okay, what's
you kind of miss him. It's happened to George W. Bush.
He's a good speaker.
Yeah,
he's better than any of them, and so I think he could actually counter Trump better than any of the Kamala or anybody that's been up against Trump.
Yeah,
but he shows up in cities that are major metropolitan cities that have big black populations, and you could do some massive events.
Yeah, I think there will be those big events. I think you're going to see that.
Then show up, and it's a Harris event with 40,000 people.
Yeah.
And suddenly these events don't look like
change.
Right. It doesn't look like she's speaking to 150 people and Trump's speaking to 20,000. So this is I think it's bizarre, and there's a lot of things that could go wrong for the Democrats trying to pull this so close. But right now it looks like the Democrats that I know are very happy about this.
Very.
And so I don't think there's going to be, I'm not voting now because I was so stuck with
I would say
Joe Biden so much.
There's actually a lot of more that are more motivated now.
Right.
Because again,
this is a different election than it was the week that President Trump was shot and got the nomination officially for the Republican Party.
I talked about it on here.
And we knew it was about to happen, but we didn't know it was going to happen so bizarre. It was just clear from the Democrat Party, like, we're pushing you out.
Yeah.
It did not matter what Joe Biden wanted to do.
No, and I think I told you that I think you were going to have people who are going to be immediately.
The delegates were secure.
Right. You're going to have people immediately reactivated when it just wasn't someone who was 80.
Told him, we'll let you pardon Hunter. No problem there because you're not running again.
Wrap up the next few months.
Wrap everything up. Do your meetings. Figure out where your staff, which staff needs to go to her, which staff is your team that needs to be out. I mean, it sounded like from KJP that she is out.
That she's going to be done?
Well, she was almost crying, saying, this is a big deal. I don't think another 4 years.
A lot of times they go.
After a few years.
Yeah.
You might go to a
You get a good MSNBC job, you're doing fine.
Yeah.
I did want to take a second, though, because we're going to head into the next segment. And then in the back half, Rick Grenell's joining us in studio. We do need it. Yeah, we're going to get into it so much more. We need to talk about what is turning into potentially an ACLJ victory right now. It's happening.
Listen, it's an ACLJ victory. Let me remind you, last May, I was on television with on Sean Hannity's broadcast, I believe, with one of the injured. It was
brutally beaten.
I don't even say protesters. That's what they are. They're counselors.
Yeah, like a counselor.
Sidewalk counselors. They're in their 70s and 80s year old. And remember this attack in Baltimore? Can we play the video for everybody? I want to just play what happened. This is the person we have been. This is the criminal, and you'll see what happened here when he pushes one of our clients into the wall.
Yeah, this was in front. If you don't remember, this was in front of a abortion
Planned Parenthood, and the next door is a pro-life pregnancy center.
Yeah. So you can watch that as it's happening, sort of in real time. And as we know,
and now you see him. So this was the first person he attacks.
And again, this was this was an elderly man.
This is an 80-year-old man. He punches him and then
punts him, essentially.
Punts him.
in the
Okay,
head.
do you remember the injuries? Can we put that face up? Yeah, okay, there he is. He's been on our broadcast. So, of course, Baltimore, this is in Baltimore, it's up to them to find the guy. They were wanted posters up. Now, this was happening last May, so over a year ago.
You probably thought
Our clients were notified yesterday he was arrested. We're getting more information from the state attorney's office.
The attacker
was arrested for that crime. We will know more information from the state attorney's office. He's got an appearance in August. We'll get to know more information about him, about what we'll do on the civil side, because, of course, there could be major civil case here as well as a criminal case because of the level of violence. But I want you to, it kind of reminds people, Logan, again, we talk about this a lot, the ACLJ. Cases, this happens in May of 2023. If I tried to go through everything that's happened from May of 2023 till today, yesterday when he's arrested, I can't. You'd have to print out a sheet for me, and I'd remember, but I wouldn't be able to just do it off the top of my head of just what we've worked on at the ACLJ. But what I can tell you is that because we have a huge team of attorneys, because of the financial support of the ACLJ, Logan, and the teams we have around the country, they are constantly working on those issues and updating on those issues and not making sure we're not overlooking. So now that we know someone's been arrested and they have a hearing, we will be there, representing our client a year and a couple of months later, and the ACLJ will assess whether or not. Of course, we'll be there with the client throughout the entire case, a criminal case. They're even looking at a federal charge here because he violated the FACE Act because he stopped access to the abortion clinic by attacking our two clients, which is an interesting way you can use the FACE Act. But that would be the Democrat-led Department of Justice looking at that right now, which is interesting. On the one hand. On the second part, too, if there is a civil case to be brought, if this person is not insolvent, we will bring it from the ACLJ. But to do that, Logan, we need people's financial support at the American Center for Law and Justice.
That's
because these kind of clients, they can't afford big
and it
law
takes
firms
a
to do
long
this.
time. I mean, this is a huge development. I think you all need to understand when this violent attacker brutally beat down this pro-life.
In a city like Baltimore.
Yeah, sometimes you feel like nothing can happen, but things are happening. This was happened. The arrests were made, and we're going to get involved. In cases like these, they sometimes take more than a year. A year can sometimes be a short term. More than a year for our legal efforts to get to where we are right now, and that's the reason we need your support, like Jordan said, during these times, especially right now. I mean, it couldn't fit better with our Life and Liberty Drive. So have your gifts doubled today at aclj.org. We are in the final days of July's Life and Liberty Drive. When you support the work of the ACLJ, you stand for life. So stand with us, stand with that pro-life counselor, and have your donations doubled. It's tax deductible. Do it right now. aclj.org. Scan the QR code on your screen. Rick Grenell joining us in just a moment.
The speech that Prime Minister Netanyahu gave to the joint session of Congress, there was extreme violence happening in Washington, D.C., right in front of Union Station, where they actually took down the American flags that fly in front of Union Station and burned them. It was Speaker Johnson and a team of Republicans went out last night and re-raised the American flag in that location. There's also, I think, one of the a version of the Liberty Bell totally was defaced, saying about pro-Hamas language, not just pro-Palestinian or anti-Israel. You notice there it says Hamas is coming. I mean, so that's what they wrote on the statues that were, again, the American flags were in the polls are connected to. So that's happening while Prime Minister Netanyahu is speaking.
I have a message for these protesters. When the tyrants of Tehran, who hang gays from cranes and murder women for not covering their hair, are praising, promoting, and funding you, you have officially become Iran's useful idiots.
Senator Chris Murphy, who's not really on the Israel issue, someone you would expect to go full bore against Bibi Netanyahu, but he tweeted out, he kind of live tweeted during the speech, and he tweeted out around 3:30 yesterday. He said the speech was more of a commentary of U.S. politics rather than a path forward for Israeli and U.S. security. The suggestion that any American who objects to the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza is a Hamas sympathizer was way out of bounds. It's as if he didn't see anything that happened in the spring across college campuses across this country, where it was not just anti-Israel protest, it was pro-Hamas, pro-terror protest. But then just 5 hours later, he tweeted this, didn't take down the other one. I've seen some disturbing images coming out of today's protest at the Capitol. I'll always support Americans exercising their First Amendment rights, but pro-Hamas cheers and messages of hate and anti-Semitism have no place in our country, period.
All right, welcome back to Sekulow. As we said, Rick Grenell would be joining us in the studio today. We were with each other at the Republican convention, and Rick is here now. And Rick, I want to go right to you on this because we're seeing it very coordinated now. I mean, it seems even more coordinated than it was really when we heard about Harris getting the nomination. Now that it's all being, we saw the coordinated Obama call this morning with Michelle. And I mean, we know that Barack Obama didn't do much for Joe Biden. You were kind of imagining now, does he hit the trail again for Kamala Harris and really shake the race up a bit and make it a different race than we were in when we were both in Milwaukee at the Republican convention?
Look, I think that they have to be very careful. They're already in we're overhyping a personality phase. And Donald Trump is doing a fantastic job of calling her a San Francisco radical and giving the whole list of who she is. When Obama when President Obama and Michelle Obama come out and they start doing too much of the personality-driven thing, I think it's going to backfire on them. We're already kind of sick of it, and we're seeing it, and that's all they do. They're not talking about policies. They're talking about, our friend,
just
Kamala.
our best friend.
Yeah.
It is an interesting time, and I've been saying on this show, too, where what's interesting about a race against Vice President Harris is you actually have a pretty good record to run against. And say, unlike a candidate where you may have to go more personal on the attack, you don't have to in this one. We can just say, here's what she stood for, here's what she's done, here's why it's horrible.
And you'll notice what she did, which I thought was unbelievable. She started running on her California record. When I was the Attorney General, this is what I did. And
Forget
I was
about the last one.
Oh, yeah. I was like, girl, that's not what you need to be doing.
Yeah. People don't love it there.
You need to be talking about, how you somehow were a moderate or you did something. But, borders are Kamala Harris. She's not really.
No, she never
embracing.
was. I mean, that was one of the craziest liberal moments of rewriting history when they said, we never said she was the borders are. And you got every network, both sides, everybody from really respected kind of in the middle to the left, to the right, everybody calling her that, her embracing that, and then it wasn't official. It wasn't an official job that she had. She also didn't do much we didn't think she was doing much with foreign policy until yesterday, Rick, when she decided to come out after a pretty short meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu, after Biden had a very long meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and she started, with the niceties about Israel, which, again, I think she's just feels like as a U.S. politician you have to say. But then she slammed Israel in a way that we haven't seen any other American politicians do. Even Joe Biden hasn't been so direct, maybe. Can we play it for everybody? Let's play it.
So to everyone who has been calling for a ceasefire, and to everyone who yearns for peace, I see you and I hear you. Let's get the deal done so we can get a ceasefire to end the war. Let's bring the hostages home, and let's provide much-needed relief to the Palestinian people. And ultimately, I remain committed to a path forward that can lead to a two-state solution. And I know right now it is hard to conceive of that prospect, but a two-state solution is the only path that ensures Israel remains a secure, Jewish, and democratic state, and one that ensures Palestinians can finally realize the freedom, security, and prosperity that they rightly deserve.
She's reading every line, and it's been scripted for her by Jake Sullivan. She literally cannot. It's a low bar. I'm glad that she actually knows that she's talking about Israel as opposed to North Korea and South Korea that she keeps confusing. This is an incredibly low bar. No one is going to believe that she can bring the two sides together.
God,
it is pathetic how weak she is. I'd like to see her first interview without a teleprompter talking about the Middle East or Latin America or Iran. Let's give her a little test. And the media need to do their job.
Yeah.
Let's see it.
I mean, people are going to say, is there going to be a debate? We don't know. I think it throws all of that off, and that's going to have to be renegotiated now between the campaigns because this is a new campaign. But like you said, it shouldn't have to wait to a debate. If you're fair media, if you're going to do your Lester Holt interview, if you're going to do these interviews, you should get questions about that. I mean, these are the issues, Rick, she has to deal with if she becomes president on day one. She actually should be dealing with them right now, too, as vice president to a president who is not able to really carry out the job. So she should be able to easily answer these questions. She's getting the best info of everybody who's running.
In front of a world leader, you can't have a script where you're just literally reading what's in front of you. It looks really inauthentic. It looks weak. I want to see her off script. I want to see what she can do just simply by talking about the issues. Does she even know what she's talking about? Yeah. I don't know.
When the bar, though, like you said, is so low, and there are Democrats who are just excited that she's not going to call Zelensky Putin. I mean, legitimately, like, that's the breath of fresh air they were looking for. Yeah. When you see the response, people are like, wow, people are really excited. I'm like, they're just excited that they're not going to be completely embarrassed just by those kind of things. Yeah. And now, of course, you can look at the record, you can look at what she's actually saying, go, I completely disagree with this entirely. However, we know she's not, when the Zelensky Putin thing happened, in that moment, I go, that was it. That was it. And then, of course, he referred to her as Vice President Trump. When those moments happened back to back within an hour.
Lloyd Austin, the black man.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was just.
He forgot his secretary. It
was spiraling.
Talking about while a war's going on.
Yeah, it was spiraling.
And there was no wars and no Americans died. Lots of things he said have been wrong. We saw it at the debate. We've seen it even in the BET taped interview. But now she's got to do it. And though it's a low bar, I mean, she has not been particularly. She was not the Kamala Harris I saw before she was vice president. I saw her a little bit during the impeachment because we were on the floor of the Senate. You're in California, where she definitely put forward a much tougher demeanor. I mean, she won statewide races in California, and that's not an easy thing to do, even inside the party. But then got to this Biden White House and started spiraling. So the question is, does she continue to spiral, or is there another Kamala Harris that comes out because she no longer has to deal with this Biden team? I think that's what Republicans are kind of worried about, maybe a little bit, because she obviously made it to the highest level of politics still.
But let me assure you, as a Californian, she has never been vetted, ever. We have a system, remember, in California that one party controls everything. The LA Times, Sacramento Beat, no one vets her. What happens in Democratic politics is the straight white guy at the top, Gavin Newsom, hands out little things to each different group. And all the groups are waiting for crumbs to say, when is it the Asians' turn? When is it the gay guy's turn? When is it the Hispanic turn? And she got it on a DEI appointment. I'm sorry. This is the fact that she was able to run because it was her turn. And she was not vetted. This is why she always goes back and talks about the California days, and she acts like, everything was going great when she was Attorney General. It was just a march to the radical left. When she went to Washington as a senator, she got roughed up a little bit. They called her the most liberal senator. She didn't like that. Right. And then suddenly as VP, she collapsed. So she hasn't been vetted.
Yeah. Folks, we're going to take your phone calls, 1-800-684-3110. Rick's going to be with us again for more of the show. I encourage you to support the work of the ACLJ. I mean, Logan, we've got a filing next week. It's the most important filing we've ever done for Israel. It's at the ICC. The ICC already agreed to accept our brief, so we're not asking them to accept it. We've done a lot of work there, so they said, yes, you can file on Israel's behalf as this amicus brief. So we're going to be doing that because they want to arrest Prime Minister Netanyahu, put him in jail in The Hague. So we'll be filing that. We need your support at aclj.org.
Yeah, I mean, when you see our national monument spray painted with Hamas is coming, we need to be there and we need to be supporting.
The U.S. isn't doing it.
No, go to aclj.org. Second half hour coming up with Rick Grenell joining us in studio. Be right back.
Last summer, we launched our first ever ACLJ Life and Liberty Drive. We never could have imagined how much you, our ACLJ members and ACLJ champions, would exceed our expectations, and we can't thank you enough. We'd love to tell you that 1 year later, threats to life and liberty are no more. Sadly, the radical left is relentlessly doing everything it can to destroy the very foundations of this great nation: life, religious liberty, and the Constitution. The good news is your ACLJ team has not slowed down. We continue to fight in courtrooms across the country, including the Supreme Court, to defend your freedoms and to save innocent babies. And we're proud to announce the return of the ACLJ Life and Liberty Drive. Right now, your tax-deductible gift will be doubled, dollar for dollar, doubling your impact to defend your freedoms and help save innocent lives. Go to aclj.org right now and join us in this fight.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. And now your host, Jordan Sekulow.
All right, welcome back to Sekulow. Rick Grenell's in the studio with us. Rick, I was with you in Milwaukee during the Republican National Convention, just a few days after there was an assassination attempt on President Trump. And then we had what I think was one of the best, and I've worked on them before, I've been to most of them, Republican National Conventions where people were the most excited and united that I've seen, where it was not a bunch of factions of the lobbyists were here, the delegates were here, and people were kind of like, I'll deal with this person, but I don't love him. They were excited about the VP pick. They were excited about President Trump. They were excited about the way he got back up and said, fight, 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 but also excited about the fact that there was this real chance that America was looking again at the MAGA policies and saying, you know what, we might want to bring these policies back, right?
Exciting.
And then we have another wild move in politics. So just a few days later, we're all coming back from that. Joe Biden, which had been talked about, but we didn't know if it would actually happen, he quits the race with a statement. We don't even see him until just a couple of days ago. And now we have Harris, who's got the endorsement of everyone. I think she has 2 more days for people to file, but they really can't. So I think they can start on August 1st. Yeah, with their nomination. So she'll wrap that up way before they get to Chicago. So a total race change. And I think there was we've seen 3 race changes. I think we saw the shooting changed a lot of things because you saw a different kind of Donald Trump speak a little bit differently, a little more personal, which I think was good to hear. Bad that what happened, but good for people to see the other side of him that you don't always see when he's in fight mode, in political mode. And then we had the convention that went great, and then Biden steps out, and it's Harris that they choose because there was talk about other people potentially getting that. And a lot of people were like, wow, Harris, interesting to stand behind her, but she's got all of the big Democrats. So, I mean, there's been more shifts in politics in 1 week than I've seen in my life.
Yeah, me too. It's really unbelievable. But let's be clear. Joe Biden was shoved out by the elites after getting 14 million votes from the Democratic process. Yeah. They tossed all that out. They said, every state you voted for Joe Biden, even though we told you that he was fine, he wasn't fine, we duped you, you voted, and now we're tossing that out. We're going to shove him off the stage and going to make sure that it absolutely just goes to the vice president. Now, I have a lot of Democratic friends who are not happy about that. Yep. They're going to suck it up and try to get behind Kamala Harris, but they know deep down inside she is a radical San Francisco Democrat.
Yeah, which is not how Joe Biden ever, even if he was putting forward policies like that kind of through his team, and the more and more he was losing control, the more and more it seemed like those policies were being put out because what he said and what the administration was doing didn't really match up.
Yeah.
Like on Israel, he was always been a lot stronger supporter of Israel, but the team was putting out other things that were not so supportive. You'd see the other spokespeople say something totally different. Like you said, this is San Francisco, California liberal. That's about as far left as you could describe someone in America.
Yeah. So remember, Joe Biden was always kind of trying to be the moderate, as you're saying. And when he picked Kamala, he picked someone to appease the far left base. The far left base is a problem for them, but they are solidly in control. And so they needed to have somebody. Now that they've elevated the woman, who is literally the epitome of the far left base, they're going to try to pick a VP that's more moderate, but the policies now completely shift. They go from the moderate Joe Biden to the actual far left radical, and she will look to defund the police. She will look to get rid of red meat because it's a problem for the environment. She will look to get rid of private health insurance. It's really a disaster.
It's like was it John King who said she might look to Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania, who's a Democrat, but he's Jewish, and that could pose problems for her inside the Democrat Party. You're like, the Democrat Party is still getting a lot of donations and a lot of resources from Jewish voters in America. Pretty nasty statement to make by John King, but we will see as who she picks because she has to pick them, I think, the next 10 days
or
so.
Soon.
Support the work of the ACLJ. We'll be right back with Rick. Take your calls, too. Get some of those in. 1-800-684-3110. Support our Life and Liberty Drive. That brief with Israel is so important that we got the ICC to say yes. We'll take the brief from the ACLJ, and the deadline is coming up. So we need your support. Go to aclj.org. Double your donation today. That's at aclj.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome former Acting Director of National Intelligence, Richard Grenell.
Last weekend, the American people bore witness to the instinctive courage of President Trump. We all know the contrast to Joe Biden could not have been greater. Tonight, I want to talk to you about why President Trump's strength and grace, which now even his opponents struggle to deny, have consequences beyond American borders. From 2001 to 2008, I served as America's spokesman at the United Nations. Back then, Republicans believed America's duty was to spread democracy by military force. We were misled about weapons of mass destruction. We intervened in other countries' affairs and signed treaties that only benefited other nations. We spent too many years ignoring America's priorities. That's what happened when Washington stopped being the capital of the United States and started being the capital of the world. There was only one man with the strength to call out the lies and failures of both Democrats and Republicans: Donald Trump. Donald Trump doesn't care if you're gay or straight, black, brown, or white, or what gender you are. He knows that we are all Americans and that it's time to put America first.
Rick Grenell in studio with us. We were with Rick, too, in Milwaukee. We did an event with the Kansas GOP that our video team was at, and I think it was a really great discussion. We'll get that out for you soon, both clips of it and the entire event. We're talking about lawfare. There it is. So it was really cool. A lot of donors there, a lot of ACLJ supporters with great questions.
Event.
Yeah, it was. And their questions were so solid about lawfare and that they've seen lawfare come to America. Obviously, it's not getting as much attention now, thankfully, because most of President Trump's cases have moved like post-election or into the fall, and even then it's in question about whether or not they're even moving forward. Because that one sentencing in September, the judge even said that's if this case by the Supreme Court, which now goes back to lower courts, even allows us to move forward with sentencing because it may not have been an official act, and we can get into a whole different show about that. What I want to talk to you, Rick, just another question about. And then we can maybe take a phone call, Logan, with Rick here.
Okay, sure.
Is just, where are we in this campaign now? I know that you're going to be with President Trump again tomorrow. He obviously, we know we've got the vice president. We know J.D. Vance is out there. We've got President Trump out there. He's hitting. He didn't slow down at all.
No.
From what happened, and we're still trying to figure out what happened with the shooting, but he hasn't slowed down his campaigning or in traveling the country and meeting with Netanyahu later this week. Tomorrow, or today, actually.
Today.
Yeah, in Florida.
I think it happened.
And yet, we also have seen a new presidential candidate come forward that didn't have to win a nomination.
Yeah. Look, I think President Trump is really energized. I talked to him the other night for a long time, late night, and it was clear that he was focused on what are the next steps in this campaign. He loves to get information. How are we doing in the different states? What are you seeing on the ground? And he's constantly asking questions. So he's fully engaged, and I think he's picking up his schedule to show at these rallies. And that's one thing that we have to talk about. He's going to do more rallies despite the fact that they tried to assassinate him. Wow. And let's just pray that the Secret Service learned their lesson and we don't have any more problems like we had.
Absolutely.
Let's go ahead and take a call. Let's go to Dion, who's calling in Washington State on line 3. Listen on the radio. Welcome. You're on the air.
Thank you for taking my call. I think the Republicans should be ecstatic because they've been handed a gift. All they have to do is really focus on her record, which is horrendous in many aspects, as you all know. And we need to focus on what's she going to do for the economy? What's she going to do for the economy? What the external threats against us? And not run a narrative. We need to point out her weaknesses and how is she gonna be capable of putting jobs, cutting inflation, cutting taxes, doing
You're
the
saying because we haven't heard this about her at all. I mean, Rick, as the vice president for 4 years, as a full term, she never was really talking about big economic issues and the inflation. She might just generally have a statement about it or go on maybe in a speech and have something written out that said, but she obviously wasn't in the room writing the policy, and her team wasn't either. So for when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to the economy, I mean, really tough issues right now, hard issues. We don't know at all. Not really. We kind of know where her views are, but not how she would implement them.
Look,
or if
she is
could.
Totally inexperienced on the economy. She is completely inexperienced on foreign policy. She loves to talk about social justice, and honestly, she is
a very VP kind of role.
Yeah,
it's like it's fine. You talk about those other issues that the liberals like and the left likes, but I'll actually run my presidential team will run the country.
Look, I think that it's a disaster for them to put her up. Her record alone is so far left and a San Francisco crazy radical. All we have to do is put her own words out there. We don't have to talk about her style. We don't have to talk about her laugh. We don't have to talk about any of this other stuff. Yeah. What we have to do is focus on what she believes about red meat and insurance and cops and the open border. There's a long list of things. She's ruined it for herself. Yeah. America is not that crazy, wacky San Francisco radical.
Yeah. I know she wants to get rid of private insurance completely. And she said all these things. I mean, some of it, too, was like it's like they want. I heard her yesterday. She was speaking in front of the teachers' union, which, of course, is very far left and a very safe place for her. She's talking about us wanting to ban books and they're trying to ban AR-15. It's like this kind of President Trump got shot by an AR-15, and it's not the idea of banning these things. It's also the wrong people having them, and the mental health issue versus the legal issues of having the Second Amendment, which the Supreme Court's been very clear. All these cases it's very clear. You're not going to be able to ban these things. You can't do it. So a lot of these things Harris is saying are just impossible to do ultimately. But the left loves it. The hard left loves it. In fact, she even gave the hard left who was protesting in Washington, D.C. a wink when she made her statement after meeting with Netanyahu saying, we're hearing you protesters.
We hear you. Yep.
Even though John Kirby has finally come out and said that some of those protesters are being paid for by Iran directly. Like he said, not all of them, but some of them are making money from Iran.
Yeah. Look, she's mocked cops. As we're having this meltdown across the country, when it just comes to simply law and order and the border, she has mocked cops. She's literally said, you think putting more police on the streets is a good idea? I don't. She's also called for disbanding ICE, immigration services, and I mean, this is so far crazy. We just have to run on her own words, and we will crush her.
Yep, absolutely. I think we can. I want to encourage people to give us a call. We do have some phone lines open, and we're going to take your calls a lot in the next segment. So 1-800-684-3110, 1-800-684-3110. I think Rick is right. We've been saying this since the day that essentially was announced. It seems like she was, immediately became the candidate. That you will have a long list of things you can go after. And if you do kind of stoop to that, and I see it all over X, it's like, okay, if you just are running on, she's got a weird laugh, she repeats herself, she says some quirky things. Again, the bar has been dropped so low for Democrats to where this is a breath of fresh air for anyone on the left. So you have to be able to now go, okay, no, what we have to do is really focus on those policy differences. And like you said, giving credit to these protesters in Washington, D.C. who were destroying the monuments, spray painting, which why they were even allowed to do that is beyond me.
Just the reason why they allowed January 6th to happen. They could have put enough security in to where people would not have been able to access the Capitol. They could have had thousands of protesters. They could have had some very bad protesters try to be violent and get there, but they have, National Guard. There's so many troops and different things you can bring in. They don't want to. They like let's show people that if we don't do this, this group does this, but see this group, this is the group we like. They burn the U.S. flag. Someone said you don't even have to pass a new law that you can't burn the flag because of the constitutional rights. That's a federally owned flag in D.C. That's just taxpayer money. Yeah. And so you can't destroy, government property like that. And yet most of the people who were arrested have already been let out and their charges have already been dropped. So even the people arrested, they just
Let's be honest. The Democrats are really excited that someone can complete a sentence.
Right, that's it.
They live, and she really can't do it that well. But she can throw in all of the explosive far left language together and get them fired up. And they're missing the fact that there isn't a single independent that looks at Kamala Harris and says, "Yeah, let's get rid of red meat."
Yeah. Hey, trust me, when you said that the first time, the comments, there are a lot of people going, now what now about red meat? If she's taking away my red meat, it's funny to see that for some reason.
You know how many farmers are in Wisconsin,
weirdly when you said
Michigan?
that. I'm watching the comments. That resonated more with people going, wait a second, what are we talking about here?
San Francisco radicals think that red meat is the problem for the environment. You've got to get rid of red meat. So I'd like to have her go through Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania and talk about getting rid of red meat. See how that works.
We have your Impossible burgers because we've taken a cell from the red meat.
Yeah, the maggot burgers I always talk about. Yep, that's what's happening. All right, hey, we'll be back in just a minute, but I did want to take a minute, Jordan. We do need to tell people we are wrapping up. I mean, this is Friday. We're wrapping up our Life and Liberty Drive for the month of July.
Yeah, and also that we've got a huge case. Just a case that a year and a month, 2 months ago, where we represent two elderly pro-life counselors, sidewalk counselors, who were beaten in Baltimore outside of a Planned Parenthood and a pro-life pregnancy center. The attacker has now been arrested, and we will work with those to make sure that the criminal, there's also federal issues, federal charges that can be brought. He'll be in court again next month, but we are working right now also on the civil side of that to see if we should bring a civil case. So a lot of work, and we see these cases. It's not just something that we do for 6 months. These are cases our attorneys have worked on for over a year just to see justice done for these individuals. You've seen the brutality. I mean, they were curb stomped. And thank God they even survived. So you could see the faces. I mean, they were in the hospital. So there's serious crimes there, serious civil charges that we could bring too, so civil claims. So we'll see who this defendant now is, this attacker, and we'll have more to announce there. But, for our attorneys to be able to do that work, we need your financial support because they stick on it. We've got to continue on the show and on the broadcast with new issues and take on the day's issues. But they stay on it working with those clients because of your financial support to the ACLJ. And right now, if you donate during our Life and Liberty Drive at aclj.org, your donation is doubled. So go to aclj.org right now, whether it's the defense of Israel or the defense of pro-life sidewalk counselors' First Amendment rights. Go to aclj.org right now. Double the impact of your donation. We're going to be right back on Sekulow.
Presidential race appears to be tightening since the withdrawal of President Biden and the ascension of Vice President Kamala Harris.
Fresh polling on the state of the race between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump.
Their head-to-head is quickly heating up. New polling shows the vice president has narrowed Mr. Trump's advantage over President Biden. The race effectively a toss-up.
We also got fresh swing state polling where the election will be decided. This comes from Emerson College and The Hill, showing Trump up 5 in Arizona, up 2 in Georgia, up 1 in Michigan, up 2 in Pennsylvania, and then you can see on the right there, tied in Wisconsin.
Those margins are a little bit better for Harris than Biden was a couple weeks ago.
Vice President Harris welcoming an on-stage showdown with former President Trump.
I'm ready to debate Donald Trump. I think the voters deserve to see the split screen that exists in this race on a debate stage, and so I'm ready. Let's go.
Just this week, Mr. Trump said he'd be willing to do more than one debate with Miss Harris.
I agreed to a debate with Joe Biden, but I want to debate her, and she'll be no different because they have the same policies.
In 2019, GovTrack, a website that tracks congressional voting, ranked Kamala Harris as the most liberal senator, 100 out of 100.
Kamala Harris was a terrible candidate when she ran for president. People didn't like her. They didn't trust her. And if you go back to the record, and there is enough time for the Trump team to do this, talk about her record. And I think that's when he can start to make gains on her.
We knew she was going to get a strong bump, right? It's not, hey, we love Kamala Harris. It's, thank goodness it's not Joe Biden, right? So there's just relief on the part of a lot of independents.
They are working so hard to say that she had nothing to do with the failed economy, with the failed border, with the failed foreign policy. But the problem is that what they're saying, therefore, is that she did nothing while the country burned.
All right, welcome back to Sekulow. It was great to have Rick Grenell with us in our studio. And again, we were with Rick. We've got that special we'll be putting out that we did in Wisconsin on lawfare and kind of facing that both now in the United States because we want to kind of put it into that as soon as possible. We've been dealing with it internationally. We are with Israel at the ICC. And we know right now that actually President Trump is meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu as we speak in Florida. Do we have the photos of that? Do you guys have those to put up on the screen? I think they released a couple of the photos.
Yeah, we'll put that up. We also have a ton of calls.
Yeah, there they are. So they're Mar-a-Lago now. We have a lot of calls to get through. There's, again, very different, the imagery. Now, President Trump did say yesterday that they need to end the war. Yeah. It's gone on too long, but they have to get their hostages back and then end the war and then go from there. I mean, that's the kind of language you obviously, Prime Minister Netanyahu wants to end the war.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone sitting
no
there going,
Israeli wants to keep fighting
war.
Gaza. That means you're losing Israeli troops every day, too.
Right.
More Israelis are dying, too. So
it
they
just
know
is
it's
how
also
the war
they're
ends.
going to get attacked more and more. But you've got to have somebody who's bigger than Israel come in and say, give these hostages back or else.
Yeah, I think it depends on how the war ends. Everyone
they don't
wants
have a
to
country
end
that will
war.
do that for them right now.
Everyone wants to end a war across the world. But it's how that war ends. That war cannot
big enough
end.
to tell Hamas, either let those out or we're just going to let them wipe you out.
Let's go ahead and take some calls. Let's go to Ann, who's calling in Pennsylvania. I'll hold about 40 minutes. So thank you, Ann. You're on the air.
Oh no, I'll wait on the hold for 2 hours if I have to. You guys are awesome.
Thanks, Ann.
I just want to say that I agree. So scripted. It makes me sick to my stomach. You know, that phone call from Michelle and Brock. Not once did she talk about helping this nation. And also, too, hold on, wait. I'm just really, really frustrated, and I have to kind of get this point out. She was not chosen by the people. She was chosen by the elite. She dropped out of the primary with 1% of the vote. So that, in a sense, makes her illegitimate to run. Now, we're going to start seeing the Hollywood concerts and the fake women's movement among the long list of radical organizations that will no doubt be funding her campaign. And I also believe her VP pick will have a lot of Hollywood clout. They chose her because she's far left, and she'll be controllable, just like Biden. And I want to lastly say I love you guys. Free Bannon and get to the bottom of the obvious inside job on Trump. This is a disgrace, what is happening to our nation, and I love you guys.
Thank you so much.
For being there,
ACLJ. Thank you, Ann. And, listen, we also saw, we saw Paul Manafort back at running the convention. Thank God. I mean, because... he's going back to the roles. He's not really a guy who does tons of interviews before, but became he was in solitary confinement for a year.
Yeah, that's crazy.
On these political issues that we now know were totally. I mean, Hunter Biden was doing the deals.
Yeah,
remember Paul Manafort. This was all about because he did business in Ukraine with another party, and that was not okay. But it's okay to be on the other party. It's just.
I think Ann is right in the sense of I feel like the day of the debate, even before the debate, they knew they were going to do this with Harris. You could feel there was something happened immediately when the debate was over and the plan was in, and they knew that we just got to.
They all said
now all we have to do is finally get Biden.
How do we got to go through our rules?
But they were ready,
and what they had to figure out. This is all I said was, okay, Joe Biden. Not that he got the nomination already, because he could release his delegates. They had to figure out who they were going to give it to that could keep the money.
Yeah,
because they had already raised like $300 or $400 million, right, of hard dollars, and if you both left the race, and that included Harris too. All you could do is give that to a super PAC. So that money is not worth nearly as much for the super PAC.
So the thought was just
Harris was it.
Yeah.
They realized under the U.S. law, federal election law, and then the DNC rules too, they could keep Harris, keep all the hard dollars. She would just add to the pot. So not only did Joe Biden give her the nomination, he also gave her hundreds of millions of dollars that he mostly raised. Yeah. I mean, he raised with his name,
absolutely,
and his family's name. What I think he probably gets in return is Hunter Biden gets pardoned. We'll see if anybody else gets pardoned. And
there usually are some at the end.
and he's going to kind of. I think he's going to get very little attention. Like if this wasn't Netanyahu here,
they're putting her up as if she's the president. That is how the presentation is right now. All right, let's go to Will, who's
at
calling
the White House.
At the White House with White House logos and everything. Let's go to Will in Ohio right now on the radio. Will, you're on the air.
Hey, Will.
Hi, thanks. I have another argument against Harris as president, commander in chief that I haven't heard people talk about yet, which is the leaders of our four principal enemies in the world, Communist China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, have very little regard or respect for women. And
yeah, that doesn't seem to matter somewhat. You know,
look
what's happening in Gaza.
About that. I mean, because you know what? Those countries have to deal with whoever the president of the United States is. And one day I think there will be a Republican president who is a woman. And, as a father of two daughters and a son, I think I don't really even think about that now as if you're tough enough or not. I actually think the opposite. And so I don't really see that as a big issue. I think a tough woman president actually is worse for those people in those countries that don't respect women. And you even saw that stuff from Chancellor Merkel, who wasn't perfect by any means, but was
tough.
Certainly tough.
Definitely tough.
You can talk to Rick Grenell about that when he was ambassador to Germany. They didn't always see eye to eye, but this was not someone who blinked a lot.
Yeah, no one really disrespected.
Grew up in East Germany,
Yeah.
and obviously was a longtime leader there. So I don't see that as a problem because you have the entire force of the U.S. military behind you. So you might be a woman, but like I said, you've been a woman who's a U.S. senator, a vice president, a attorney general. You've kind of, she's had all of the jobs that you would need to have to be an expert on all the issues. Yeah. Unfortunately, I have not.
She's falling on the wrong
heard
side.
Her on those. Yeah. Well, broadly, she goes to the far left. But could you imagine her getting into like a real discussion on taxes issues? And do you think she knows it?
Let's go ahead and take this call. I think this is a good one to wrap us up on. Gene is calling on line one. Gene, thanks. Hey, Chris, Linda, and Mario. I appreciate it, but we're not going to be able to probably get to you. But Gene, you're on the air.
Okay, thank you for taking my call. Yeah, I also wonder about sending a woman to negotiate with the Arabs unless her plan is just total appeasement.
Gene, we are running out of time. Give me your comment about the two-state solution you had, because that I think is a good way to end this.
Solution. I remember that 50 years ago when Senator McGovern talked about it, and it'll never happen.
Well, listen, I agree with you because we've already got the Palestinian Authority saying, let us come in and help you run the government. We'll take over Hamas, the running of government, and you can just be the terrorist group. Yeah. That's what they're basically saying. So let's stop killing each other. Let us just run like this. We'll run the schools. We'll help you take the billions of dollars from the UN and put it in your kid's bank account, by the way, at the same time. Because they're all billionaires somehow, these terrorists. Interesting to be a terrorist billionaire who lives in, you get to live in Doha in a beautiful condo where you are letting your people be killed. But Palestinians have to make this decision ultimately, that they are going to stop this conflict in mass. If they don't, Israel has to be defensive, and there's no reason to talk about a two-state solution because there's not a place to even put a state. Now, we know right now, though, instead of trying to push a two-state solution, what they're trying to do is criminalize the Israelis, criminalize being an Israeli, criminalize being in a Jewish state of Israel. Even when Prime Minister Netanyahu can say, this is our Ethiopian soldier, this is our Druze Muslim soldier, so that the IDF, while it is this Jewish state, the IDF and Israel is made up of more diversity than you're ever going to see in the Palestinian territories. You're going to see that diversity there with lots of people with different backgrounds and different religious views, all being treated equally. We have our Life and Liberty Drive right now. It's less than a week away, and we are going to be filing at the International Criminal Court. Logan, this is the biggest brief we filed in support of Israel, and the ICC gave us the green light to file it. We need your support. Double the impact of your donation today. Donate today at aclj.org. Make that donation. Double your impact, aclj.org.